All right.
Yeah!
We're starting.
Yeah.
We're here. We're
Yeah.
here. Up-to-Date Cinephile, week 3.
We are up to fucking date. Remember, smash the like, smash the subscribe, sound off in the comments. Keep those hearts coming. This is it. This is how me and Kyle get famous. You need to help me in particular.
I don't want to be famous.
You got to help me in particular because Kyle, he's already a big deal. But I need to get to be. I got a kid. She's very cute.
That
She's
is
very cute. I need to find a way to succeed in life.
Adorable, darling kid.
She is so cute. Don't do it for me. Do it for Carolina, my kid. I need to stop fucking up in life. We're talking about movies.
All the movies. Well, only 2.
That's it. That's what we got.
I saw like 4 this week.
Ooh.
You
were more up-to-date cinephile than me.
I try. It depends on how bored you are in life. Like, I just... If I'm bored, I just go to the movies, or I throw one on.
That's true. You're still a bachelor right now. We'll let the people in. We'll let the people in.
Not really. I'm not a bachelor, but I'm living a bachelor lifestyle.
Yes, that's what I mean. Don't get the wrong idea.
You won't.
Don't get the wrong idea.
But
what I'm saying is you don't have your usual companion.
No.
And so your life
not
is
right now.
Essentially meaningless.
No,
and
she's
you just
jet setting. She's living the jet setting life.
You just wander the earth.
I do. Yeah, that's
watching
pretty much
movie
me.
from one theater to another.
Yeah, just wander to each movie theater and pick something. You know, some are good, some are bad.
Don't listen to AMC.
No, I don't. I actually don't do that. I've never done that.
He just watches the Nicole Kidman video over and over again.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's so good.
It's the worst.
It's going to come on screen 25 minutes.
I think it's literally the worst.
Time.
Minus the 25 minutes of trailers at AMC, the Nicole Kidman button at the end. It's like after you suffer through all 25 minutes.
You get your reward.
You get your reward. Like the worst corporate sponsored ad I've ever sat through.
Since we're letting the people behind the curtain for just a minute, I will say that I turned 40 this year, so I'm old. I'm an old man. I'm a man. I'm 40.
I'm not too far behind.
And I half the time I forget what movie I'm there to see. half the time I'm. It's fun. I think what they do is they give me a little gift because then I'm surprised. I'm like, I'm here to see Eternals. Oh, and then I think that's an interesting life choice.
Yeah, and then it's a dreary life choice.
We're getting some takes early. Hot takes. Pew pew pew.
Well, we're reviewing Marvel's Eternals, the next chapter in the Marvel Extended Universe, and we will be reviewing Pablo Larrain's. He's a Chilean filmmaker. His take on the life of Princess Diana, called Spencer. And
for a second, I thought the movie was called Stewart because I convinced the person who plays Diana. So I was Googling for the movie Stewart, and Stewart's also kind of a regal name. There were the Tudors and the Stewarts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was like, I was trying to look up the movie Stewart. I'm like, oh no, that's not it. It'd be funny if she had the same last name as that. They're close. Stewart Spencer, that's close.
Yeah, it's close. Very close. But why don't we get into Marvel's Eternals first?
Let's do it.
That's the big one this week. I feel like if people are tuning in, they might be venturing... although I think with the trend of reviews, I don't think it's going to be surprising that I found this to be a dour, charmless slog of an experience.
Did you find it gauche?
Gauche.
Did you find it deleterious? Did you find it? What's a good word? I should have brought a thesaurus.
I mean, we're
what's our new? What's a new? You need to come up with a new word that someone hasn't used.
They haven't used. I mean, you look through the internet.
Languid.
Languid, I think, has been used, but it is certainly that. I mean, it is. I think, and it's really sad because I think it might be the most interesting subject matter that Marvel has actually ventured in the kind of the iconography of superheroes, the history of superheroes, like what that means to like the scope of the universe to a large degree, and then the idea of like towering against God or your creator or what your intended purpose is to be and to revert that notion.
Yeah.
I think all those are interesting ideas that are not ventured at all in this movie to any.
Well, I think they're ventured,
but they're not. They're not completed. There's no characterization that's convincing to go along with it. None of the personalities are even though Kumail Nanjiani is trying desperately to be charming. It comes off as irritating and annoying, and so the whole experience is just it's expunged of charm. None of the characters seem interesting. The scope of this universe and the world building is this, like, similarly on the level of Dune, and yet on a picturesque level, it is dreary looking. I think it's ugly. The CGI is bland. The villain is uninvolved.
Is there a villain? I don't even.
I mean, yeah, well, there's really two. Know. I mean, we have.
There's kind of three villains, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is our spoiler-free portion, so we'll just say there's villains.
There's villains that
there's
you
villains,
know.
You're gonna. There's gonna be protagonists and antagonists. This isn't, an abstract film, so there's protagonists and antagonists in a hero's journey, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Kumail. I think I probably like this movie maybe a little more than you did.
Probably.
Probably. you fucking. Because I had
no. I just found it.
Yeah, but I think the Kumail. Like, think about Kumail, right? This is great. One of my favorite quotes from all of written words is Hunter Thompson's quote about the Nixon administration from Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72, where he says that the guys on the Nixon campaign seemed like they were the kind of people who would shoot a rocket to the moon to see if the craters were full of smack. Right? I mean, it's like, think about what is done and what the ultimate payoff is. I look at Kumail. Kumail got jacked, right? It was an internet thing. This even came across my transom, right? And I don't pay a ton of attention to internet stuff, but he got jacked. I like Kumail a lot. He actually was sort of coming up in Chicago, and I saw his one-man show. He was part of there was this group called the Blurds. They were good. They were funny. Sort of new.
I did Q&As with him. He's wonderful.
Yeah, we like Kumail. We like Kumail. This is not a shot at Kumail. But so Kumail gets jacked. I mean, he gets jacked, right? He looks great, very sexy. You're looking good, Kumail. Come on the pod. But to play a role in this movie that just, like, some people think he's kind of the saving grace of this movie. I find, like, it's not his fault, right?
No.
But it's like Marvel movies are like pop songs written by 13 Swedish people. I've probably made all these jokes before.
It's fine.
But, like, thanks, Kyle. Like, it's like, we got to have a funny guy. We got to have comic relief. Yeah. We'll get Kumail.
It's either serious or quippy. This is the spectrum of characterization.
So he's saying, like, they're fighting enemies to the death, and at the end he's got to do the equivalent of the Tony Stark like shawarma line, where he's like, "Oh, did you get that on camera?" It's like, it's just so dissonant. It's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's so, like, it's such strong, powerful evidence that these movies are written by computers. These movies are not written by human beings. You cannot tell me these movies are written by human beings. They are written by an algorithm.
Yeah. No, there is, like,
and it's like, we need to have X number of jokes, right, distributed throughout the movie, right? We need to have X number of jokes with a certain statistical distribution throughout the movie. That's put into the algorithm, and it spits out the jokes.
Yeah, well, and the algorithmic quality really comes out throughout this particular film. We've noticed it before, where some jokes don't land, some jokes are dissonant from the tone that's being presented within scenes, and they try and undercut it, they try and skewer it, they try and relieve the tension. And I understand the rhythmic quality of that, or the character quality of that. In particular, in Eternals, it's a tonal mess. It does not know how to handle death, bad news, without this undercutting with humor that doesn't work in the scene. It comes out in a repetition and revealing that Ajax, that's a spoiler, actually. So I should say that, well, it's, I don't know.
Let's just go to the spoiler part. Here's the end of the non-spoiler part. You're going to see this movie probably, or you're not.
Depending
and what we
on
say is going to have you've probably already seen it if you're going to see it. What we say is going to have nothing to do with it. It's fine. I think this movie's fine.
I think it's worse than fine. I think it's a display of all the worst qualities.
So you got one fine, one worse than fine. Spoilers starting now.
Yeah. Well, so with Ajax, Salma Hayek's character being dead, which actually, as soon as the movie starts, you should realize, based off of what you've seen in the trailers, that that is the only possibility, and that Richard Madden is the bad guy because he's the last one to have seen her. Because that scene that opens up all the trailers is her saying, "Oh, we only got 7 days."
That's why
he's
it's
literally
good I don't
the last
pay
guy.
Attention to the trailers.
Yeah, literally the last guy to see her.
Stare into space.
I'm like, well, I don't understand. They clearly did not know how to market this movie. It has such daunting mythology and lore that again is taken, if you are a fan of Jack Kirby's work. I mean, let's be real, Eternals is like a B or C level quality work in the Marvel franchise, because it's kind of a Vanity Fair project for Jack Kirby, and the only real greatness that came out of it was the depiction, the visual depiction of the interstellar scale of these kind of Marvel stories, the colors used, the artistry used. It's a beautiful comic. And what strikes me as, I think, insulting when Kevin Feige says that this is a love letter to Jack Kirby is there's nothing beautiful about this world depiction. There's nothing. It seems so stricken of color. It's muted. There's it has no personality. None of these characters are vibrant or come off as believable or have a scope or a motivation that we can all connect to. They just seem somnambulant zombies.
The problem is they don't have access to like what could make a movie like this interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not, I don't know. I mean, we're at such a cul-de-sac. I think it's more so I'm going to keep on trying to zoom out in this conversation because I think that talking about the movie itself is not terribly interesting.
Sure.
I feel like we're at such a cul-de-sac with these movies, and maybe we have been for a long time with these superhero movies. Like, yes, you could make a movie that's a pure aesthetic experience, right?
Sure.
That has very little plot, or the plot is very sort of thinly constructed, right? And you could just make it like a visual masterpiece, right?
That's not this, I'll tell you that.
No. Clearly not. This movie is half an hour too long at least.
Oh, yeah. It's
got whole plot lines that kind of go nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? Like the whole plot line with how the deviants become intelligent. They just make that guy smart and then they kill him. Like it was just the most pointless shit.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I guess Angelina Jolie
the deviants
got to have a moment of fighting this
and that's
thing.
another thing. The deviants are supposed to be a race of aliens. Yeah, whether or not created by Aramesh or whatever these celestials are. Which again, I mean, from the start of this movie, the fact that this is the first Marvel movie to have like a scrolling text, you're like, oh no. Here's homework that you need to now understand and root yourself in this world.
I'm glad you brought up the scrolling text, because the scrolling text is a giveaway, right? And it's a giveaway that these things have jumped some sort of shark.
Yeah.
Because it's incomprehensible.
It's
incomprehensible. It reads like, have you ever read that original Star Wars treatment by George Lucas, which is totally,
which
is mental and obviously written under like intense amounts of cocaine? Before someone got to him and said, we gotta pare this down. We gotta simplify it. Right.
What they should have done with the prequels as well.
Like half, yes. Yeah. Half the word, it's just like I'm a very good reader. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm telling you at home right now, my reading comprehension, stellar. Like Mine's really
fine.
Good.
Mine's fine.
Yeah, Kyle's, he's got a lot of strengths. But I'm very good at reading comprehension. I cannot tell you, I would, if I looked at it, not scrolling, printed out on a piece of paper, I would still have a hard time telling you what it is, because half the words are just fucking gibberish. Mm-hmm. It's just the boodly boodlies and the goobly dooblies. It's like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Right? Yes. I mean, it's like if the point of the scroll in Star Wars is to situate you in a sort of iconic and very simplistic vision of, being in the middle of a kind of mythological heroic journey, right? Which is what Star Wars is. This is meant to situate you in a world that is just sort of mystifying and weird.
Yes.
And not really, nobody's really going to attempt to make it intelligible for you. And it doesn't even really matter.
Yeah,
right? It doesn't matter. It's alienating because it doesn't matter.
No, because after they explain the dynamics of celestials, and there are nerds out there, and I don't mean nerd in a
Nerds.
negative connotation. They're just generally that nerd culture who gets into these comics, and they'll explain to you the first armaments and get into all of the dynamics in the celestial world and the universe construction. They'll be able to explain to you. They are well versed in this mythology, but I think that this gets into, because this is at the level of Dune world building to a large degree, and it's interesting that
it is Dune. It's the same story.
Yes,
Or it's the same kind of superstructure of a story, which is about thinking about the perils, right? So here we go, right? So you get to this sort of, you want to make serious movies about superheroes. I'm not sure why, but let's. Okay, you want to make them. So where do you have to go? Well, you go to the problems of like noblesse oblige, and the kind of do the, it's the end of the, it's the end of the Wrath of Khan, right? Do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Mm-hmm. How do we feel about these kind of super entities that control our lives? How do we feel about the fact that sometimes they intervene, sometimes they don't, or they do under these weird principles that don't really make sense to us? Why did you help us here but not there? It's just, it strikes me as such kind of, it's interesting in the sense that it's the only thing that's interesting, mm-hmm. right? That you can say with these characters. And it's not clear to me, once you get past Alan Moore and Watchmen, what more there is to say about this.
Yeah.
Because the movie is aware. I will give the movie some credit. Of the Marvel movies, it is the most aware movie that superheroes are fundamentally fascist. That it's a fascist dream, right? Yeah. To come in and be saved, right? And to have someone who is wiser than us and better than us,
stronger,
behind the curtain deciding who lives and who dies, right, for the greater good of whatever, right, the universe in the case of this movie. It's a fascist dream, right? If you buy into it because you want yourself, your identity, to be sublimated into some greater project, mm-hmm. where you are sort of gone, right? And what is left is the overmind or whatever, right? That's like doing the right thing for everyone.
Yeah, and you have that kind of in visually sustained in the movie. This whole idea that these team members, because we have 10 characters, which I think is the worst daunting aspect of this film, to introduce to you 10 new characters, give them different powers, give them different opportunities, give them different characterizations, and the movie fails, I think, every single one of them with superficial degrees of attention. And at the end, it's about having that mind come together, their powers coming together to give, to help give upon someone else their unrealized potential, yes. which is very repetitive.
Yes, basically some people with a lot of power get together to become powerful enough to help some other people that have even more power.
Yeah.
Of course, we're just pawns. We're always just pawns. Regular people don't matter.
Well,
there is no hope for regular people.
Yeah.
We are entirely at the mercy. And the laughability of this in the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is made manifest in a kind of unintentionally funny moment with the luminous Salma Hayek, mm-hmm. Where she talks about how 5 years ago half the people on this planet died, and then the humans brought them back, right? Referring to the whole Avengers Endgame shit. Yeah. And it's like Earth in the MCU is the equivalent of Sunnydale in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Shit just keeps happening nonstop, and you wonder why anyone sticks around.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's easier to leave Sunnydale than it is to leave Earth, although in the Marvel Universe, I suppose you can. If you're powerful enough, go someplace else. Like, they're destroying this planet and killing everyone, or threatening the death of everyone, threatening the annihilation of the planet. once every other week. I mean, if I were on this version of Earth, I would just be like, this is fucked, man. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's just not
depression.
like, but the problem is, so you made a movie called End Game, right? Mm-hmm. It was the end of the game. I guess not.
No.
I thought you were done. I thought that was it. I thought that was the last movie. And the game's over.
No.
But the problem is, once you've gone to universal annihilation, how are you going to raise the stakes anymore?
Yeah.
Where do you have left to go?
Yeah, it's gotten too insanely grandiose. Like,
but where do you go?
I don't know. It's multiple universes. Like, it's about
because the whole point of the
string
Eternals
theory of Eternals.
The whole point of the Eternals is that they're only going to show up if shit's really bad, right? If this one particular existential threat. And it's funny because it also is kind of has this weird parallel to Endgame, where they're about, Thanos is about like splitting the population in half. They're about getting the population big enough that the planet can like basically
have power.
give like the it's like a baby's first meal, right?
Yes.
When the Celestial's born, he get a big meal in him.
Yeah.
Or her. I don't know why I'm gendering it.
No, I mean, that's generally what it is.
It does have a very deep voice, these Celestials.
They certainly
maybe that
do.
explains my gendered interpretation of it. But,
I think they're genderless, but there's this
But to get it born, you got to give it a meal of like 8 billion people, right?
Yeah.
They just get it going.
Yeah, it is about this, the continuous operation of the universe requires these planets to be subsumed to create these entities that continue to create other worlds that then create other entities. And so it's a weird cyclical part of the universe. And when you explain the universe in this particular way, it really does bring, once you get into this level of what the world is going to be, I mean, how's Spider-Man gonna, fight against this kind of entity?
Yeah.
How are you able to really survive? I mean, then now it really does become the true Ubermensch fascist philosophy of that you are dependent upon someone who is insanely powerful.
We are totally just living at the whims, and there is truth to the fear of that, right? Which I think we can all relate to, because our Eternals are Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and George Soros and whoever, right?
They've got less interesting costumes, I have to say.
I mean, who knows what they wear when they're at fucking Bohemian Grove or wherever they decide our fate, Davos, whatever sort of satanic ceremonies they do. But the movie doesn't have anything interesting to say about that, right? It doesn't have anything interesting to say because what can you say about it? You hope they're good, and if they're not good, you're fucked. And they're not going to be good because that's just not the way it works, right? Which is what we get from Moore, right? From Alan Moore. We get the idea, like, these people, they're not going to be good.
No.
And even a good version of them is nasty, right? Which at least Dune is wrestling with, right? The idea that you're never going to get a good person like this. Like, even the best case scenario of your superhero is not very good.
No.
Because a world run by superheroes is not very good, even if they're the best version that you could hope for.
Yeah. And I think this gets down to kind of the problematic nature of Eternals and the dynamic that they're setting up with the motivation of these heroes at the center of it, is that they were created, they're like essentially robotic essences that are made to serve a purpose. They're on the ground soldiers for the Celestials, and so they're removed of a sense that all they know is duty and obligation. So I guess a large part of that is about them discovering their own autonomy and their own purpose and their own reasoning for doing things. But it's based off of a very superficial understanding or connection to Earth and letting Earth live, why Earthlings and human beings, or the Joe Schmoes, the regular people, to live, to allow them to live, to allow them to keep going. And you get these superfluous lines of dialogue with like Ajax saying, I've seen them fight, I've seen them war. And then she's like, but I've seen them love and this. And you're like, when?
Yeah, no, that's so trite.
It's trite.
It's so
none
trite.
of the characters, I think even when you get into the only character connection of Fastos, who's played by Brian Tyree Henry, who I love. I love the actor.
I love that dude.
And actually, he's one of the more interesting characters in the movie because he's wrestling with some other things that, again, superficial, not really deep. But the fact that, and this relates to this whole gay plot line that, I do think it's a PR stunt where Marvel and Disney are saying, oh, well, it's because of the gay thing, and now you need to go support this because it's the first gay character.
We're always gonna, no war but the culture war, and
exactly.
In
well,
our
and
lives.
it gets people, personally attached to something that I think is not handled entirely well. It's just a decorative quality.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's as well developed as anything in the movie, right?
But that's the thing. He's the only one who really has a genuine. He has a husband.
What are you talking about? You got
and
Jon Snow. You got Jon Snow.
No, he's boring.
Jon Snow.
He's boring. He should die.
But so here's the thing that I like,
and he's just a setup for another franchise.
Here's the thing that I do like, though. This is what I've been wanting for a long time. Massive crossovers. Bring Game of Thrones characters into the Marvel universe.
Yeah, why can't just it's multiverse?
Why isn't Luke Skywalker in here? Why isn't the fucking Mandalorian bouncing around? Bring them all together, Disney. You've bought everything. You own everything. You own every intellectual property.
Wrenching a free guy usage.
Bring them togetper. Why not? Why not? I mean, let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Like here's the thing. This I'm just gonna keep coming back to this. Like, let's have some fun. This movie is not very fun.
No, it's not.
Like it has moments of
levity,
like things that could be fun, right? And these movies are so tonally fucking stupid. Like, because the after credit sequence is just ridiculous, where they introduce another set of characters, Eros and Pip. Where it's like, okay, we've just saved the universe. We're going to talk to the other Eternals about how they're being manipulated by the Celestials. But we're going to get some goofy guys in there just to let you know it's going to be fun here. It's like,
I mean, so this is where the emptiness of the entire Marvel setup and experience is for me. Is that what you just experienced, what you were experiencing in these punches at the end of the movie about what's coming next, these little aperitifs like that they're feeding you from their hands.
Is it amuse-bouche?
Just right from their hands. It's nothing that you just experienced matters. That 2 hours and 40 minutes that you spent in that theater, nothing matters because it was set up for something else. It's constant.
Well, that's the emptiness at the heart of the project.
At the best, it's constant titillation and foreplay to lack of catharsis and conclusion. There's no completion to this, and I find that to be massively irritating. I find it to be unfulfilling, and there's and annoying because it comes at the end and you're like, well, I now have to wait for whatever comes next to have the same little tease for then what comes next after that. It's a constant cycle.
It's television. It's television.
Yeah, and yet it's the worst kind of television.
Of course.
It's the worst kind of television where it's non-ending and it's so frustrating.
I feel like the fun in these movies is the equivalent of a employee event you have to go to that's supposed to be fun. Mm-hmm. It's like to tell you, hey, we're gonna have some fun now. It is fun time. It's like that David Foster Wallace book, a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. Like, this is supposedly fun. Like, oh, we're going to see Eros and Pip at the end of it. Ooh, it's fun times are coming. Happy days are here again. It's very hollow, right?
Oh, extremely.
But here's what I think is interesting. This is the question I really wanted to ask. We're finally going to get to it.
Oh, good.
Why is this one the one that's getting the backlash? Because I feel like this movie just is Black Panther.
Well, and I'm not a big fan of Black Panther.
But Black Panther is 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this is 49%.
You're right.
Something like that. Why this movie?
Yeah.
This movie, in a way, like, to me, the way that Black Panther resolves is way more frustrating than the way that this movie resolves.
I agree.
Because there, the resolution that is required to get these people ready for the next thing, for the end of the game, which is not really the end of the game, is for them all to kiss and make up. I mean, basically, spoilers for Black Panther, but if you haven't seen it, I mean, come on. The people in Wakanda are wasting each other. They're killing each other. They're fighting with each other because there's a disagreement about whether T'Challa or Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who's right. And it's your classic MLK, Malcolm X kind of.
That's actually very good. That is like Booker T. Washington. And,
yes, it's the
W.B. Du Bois.
It's the classic thing.
That is essentially what it is.
It's the classic thing, right? It's that classic conflict about what you should do in the face of injustice. A totally reasonable and interesting conflict. That conflict is the basis of the X-Men, the whole X-Men series, which I think is some of the better Marvel comics. Mm-hmm. It has been turned into a few, at least serviceable films.
It's very true.
So what do? Well, they can't keep the conflict going because the people from Wakanda need to be able to show up and whoop ass at the end of Endgame. So they kill Killmonger, and everyone just kind of is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a resolution that is totally unbelievable, even on its own terms, right? I mean, the resolution of this movie, like whatever you think about it, they beat the big bad and they move on. Fine, right? I mean, it's fine. The resolution of Black Panther is not believable. That the people in Wakanda would just be cool with each other again after having a civil war. I mean, they have a civil war, and like the next moment, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And Wakanda's gonna
explained away.
Wakanda's gonna sort of start slowly re-engaging with the world, which is kind of the fundamental point of difference. And what's really wasted about that movie is that it's Killmonger that has the better of the argument, and they make him more evil to justify killing him. Like they make him go around like waste some old lady.
He has the better argument, but they then extend him and exaggerate him to the point of Black Hitler, and then so that's why he has to
he has to kill people and sort of let his girlfriend get killed to show us that he's a bad guy, which means he deserves to die, or it's okay to kill him, and then everything's fine.
They should have let it sit in the battle of ideology there. Instead, they allowed the ideology to be explained away because of superficial qualities, which is explaining away is the Marvel
because they
thing.
have to keep it moving.
Yeah.
They have to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Right? They can't let this whole conflict simmer.
No.
Which would be interesting.
I think it would.
But to me, the movies are very similar. They have a lot of really talented people involved. They have some things about them that are interesting. Like we do get to see Chloe Zhao in her element, kind of in these arid landscapes that kind of evoke the things she's interested in.
Yeah, but there's an emptiness to that too, because
I agree, but and Wakanda looks really cool. I think that some of the artistry of Wakanda is some of the more interesting visual things in Marvel movies. Yeah. So you have these things. I guess all I'm saying is, why this one?
I think I have a somewhat of an answer. I don't think it's, I think there are many answers, but particularly I think there's a exhausting aspect to this movie that is particular.
I thought you were going in a different direction, but go on.
Oh, no. So with like Black Panther, there is a level of getting involved in the story that's very passive yet enjoyable, based off of the colors, based off of the set design, based off of the performance. Chadwick Boseman has such a singular presence, and then you get into the other characters like Letitia Wright, who is going to carry on the franchise, it seems. And
you're true. There are no characters in this that are as compelling and interesting as either of them.
Yes, and that's what's so grating. This experience, I think, visually, conceptually, everything seems very Marvel, but all the characters are so they're so one-dimensional. I don't think there is an actual two-dimensional or multifaceted character in this movie. Like I said, the spectrum of characters is either serious or quippy, and the seriousness, when you get into like Icarus, Richard Madden's character, he is so bland, and his relationship with Circe is incredibly bland. You have this,
although they do have sex,
tasteful, very tasteful.
But
sex
but at least, I mean, I'm on record as saying there should be more fucking in Marvel movies. So
yeah,
there is a little bit of fucking in this, which
and yeah, what's
what's
so interesting is that now that we've gotten to see it, there's something so imprisoned about this forced intimacy that shouldn't be the case for these characters. You should be able to feel the palpable nature of this. I agree with you. I think there should be
Icarus
more
is lame.
of it.
Do not get with Icarus, Cersei. I mean, he is lame. Like you could do a lot better.
Yeah, well, Jon Snow.
I mean, and even he's got
he's also a little bland. I mean,
yeah, she. I think maybe she's an alpha. She's a stealth alpha, and she wants to be with men who are kind of lame.
Chan also is given not very much to do in a personality that it just is so one note. And so the dynamic between these, and then when you see in comparison, when you have the innuendo, and playfulness of like Druig and Makari, Barry Coogan's character, and what's the actress's name? I should know it. Lauren Ridloff. You know, she's deaf, and it's the first like deaf portrayal of like a superhero. You know, lucky for them that they invented American Sign Language back in 7,000 years prior, you know, to when it actually came around.
You know, I mean, they speak English too, so I mean, they speak American English.
Logic could be thrown out.
It'd be funny if they spoke like Old English, like they were in Chaucer.
That would be cool. I think I'd get down on that. They have like a playfulness that, you know, and I think one of the best jokes in the movie lands when Kumail, like, because Kumail has the entirety of humor based upon his shoulders. I mean, you give a little to Gilgamesh.
Big shoulders, though. Jacked up shoulders.
He jacked up.
Looking good, Kumail. Looking sexy.
Ma Dong-suk as Gilgamesh. He has some good lines as well. But those are the big heavy guys. So they have all laying on their shoulders.
Big guys are funnier. I mean, we can speak from experience.
It's true. Yeah.
You have a big guy. Actually, you want a big guy and a little guy.
That's true.
That's the best.
That's the dynamic.
That's the humor.
That's right
gold,
there.
Right?
So he says, like, when he finally sees them like actually flirting in front of everybody, because you get a little moments in the past that were private, and he goes, "When did this happen? Because I am not feeling this." And you know,
he's not shipping them.
He's uncomfortable, and you know what? I can feel his discomfort because there's actual intimacy in that interaction. You're like, oh. Barry Coogan's a great actor. I think he is above the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, to be honest, he should not be involved.
Who's beneath it?
Who's beneath it?
Tommy Wiseau. Maybe.
Yeah, that's probably true. Although I could see him showing up.
Oh God, if Disney, if you could acquire the rights to The Room and insert the characters from The Room into the Marvel Universe, I'll absolutely go. I'll go see that movie twice. You can get 2 ticket sales.
Yeah, we'll go see that.
You can get 2 ticket sales from me. I'll bring friends.
It's just so interesting because when you have innuendo and you have playfulness and you have this like dynamic, I'm like, oh, I believe that those two, you know, in the 7,000 years that they've existed.
About them.
Yeah, actually, give me a movie about them. I also believe that they've probably been fucking. They've probably been together.
Yeah, show us some sex.
But you don't need to necessarily see it because you believe it. You would like to see it. I mean, and I get it. I would like. I mean, like. But then again, you see it in this movie, and I'm like, it's tasteful, but it's also flaccid. It's just there's nothing behind it. There's no flame, no fire. And you're just like, why? Why bother showing it when
Icarus
it's just lame?
So it's like, oh, I gotta do my duty no matter what. It's very boring. It
is so boring.
I mean, at least with Kumail, like the one thing I did really like about the Kumail character is that he kind of absents himself from it, but he doesn't fight against them, which I thought was like, okay, at least you're giving me the levels of response.
Yeah,
because I do think that like whether we like it or not, the kind of utilitarian analysis behind what's going to happen if the Eternal gets born, that's some shit people actually buy into, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are people who say, like, well, yeah, to make another... What if we're going to make another 1 trillion lives and 8 billion people have to suffer? Like, those are the hard choices that powerful people need to make. That is a thing people actually believe. There is an argument for that, right?
Yeah, it gets down to like the cold. That's almost like Bentham utilitarianism.
Yes,
like strict mathematics.
It's very strict, but the point being, I appreciated that they had a character take a kind of unexpected route. Mm-hmm. Like, because that at least gave the moral dimension of it.
Yeah.
Like I think this movie is more engaged with the moral dimension of its problems than Black Panther.
Sure.
So I think Black Panther's, but the thing that's sad about, I mean, I agree with you that it has certain virtues, right? It has some interesting characters. The conflict is better set up, right? Because it's more focused. This movie has so much surplusage.
Yes.
Like I said, the whole plot line with like who the deviants are, what they are. I mean, you can tell what kind of movie this is because it has a literal exposition dump in it, where Gemma Chan's character Cersei has to be just like read in. I mean, it's okay, I guess, because it does make sense that it would have happened. It doesn't feel totally surplus.
Well, I don't think she's the only one. Most of the characters are expository dumps. They're all there to explain things or explain the
but that was
dimensions.
A straight, like, here's 2 minutes of the Celestial monologuing about what's really going on. Mm. That was the reveal. That's the big reveal, right?
That's true.
She gets sucked into this, whatever, space where she gets told, here's what's really going on.
Here's what's going on.
Here's the reality.
And Icarus knows. That's one of the spoilers. But yeah, you're right. There's the lack of motivation about Icarus. About essentially, he's like, "Oh, I've been told to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. Therefore, I need to watch this go." I'm like, can you have like a little more flair to that? Can you believe that they're not worthy of living? Can you believe that, like, whatever it is, it just give me something.
Yeah, no, they're not going to give you anything.
Nothing.
But see, when you started to say exhaustion, I thought you were going to go a different direction. Which was I just think people are exhausted with this stuff generally. That's the only
fatigue. That's
the only explanation I can give for why, up until now, these movies have been better received. This isn't the worst Marvel movie. Like, it just isn't. They're a lot of them are very
Incredible Hulk's probably worse.
A lot of them are very mediocre. So here's real talk, right? If you told me you have to rewatch one Marvel movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, easy.
That would be up there.
You have to rewatch a second one. I don't know, maybe the first Iron Man. We'll keep on watching Thor Ragnarok, Guardians 2 maybe after that, and after that it's torture. I don't want any one of them. And I think Guardians is the only one that I would potentially put on for my own just enjoyment.
It's got great soundtrack. It's got great vibe,
fun,
colors,
it's funny.
world. Yeah, James Gunn brought something.
There's
to that.
A lot,
that was interesting.
But I'm just saying it's just. I'm never gonna watch Endgame again. I'm never gonna watch any of the 3-hour plus ones again. I got a life to live.
Endgame almost requires you, I think, for context, to experience all those movies again in order to get to it. To watch it on its own, or at least watch the two punch of Infinity War and then Endgame. That's 5 hours plus of your time that ultimately, I don't think you're ever going to recapture it. It's we talk. You can compare it to the kind of drug experiences. It's like it's more of like heroin. You're never going to reach that high again. You're never going to get the same exact high. You're going to be chasing. You're always just
chasing it. You're always just chasing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel. I feel like people are getting tired. I feel like maybe the critical industrial complex has finally said, well, we need to dislike one of these to maintain our credibility.
I guess.
But I'm just trying to say, this movie is not worse than a lot of them. It's fine. They're all fine. I mean, or whatever. Like I said, if I compare and contrast it with Black Panther, which some people think is one of the best ones, some people think it's the best one, I'm not sure that I'm just not sure that there's a dime's worth of difference between them. I mean,
I would agree.
I could give some pros to one and some pros to the other.
Yeah.
But they're not massively different, and the response to them is massively different.
Yeah.
And so I don't. And maybe to your point, maybe what it means, since we live in this endless culture war, maybe the identity stuff is not enough. Mm-hmm. Maybe people are just not, because you could write a positive review of this movie, where you'd say, hey, look, we've got a deaf character, we've got a gay couple, we've got this culture, we've got this racially diverse cast. That's good. We need representation. Representation matters. the movie is entertaining enough, whatever. You could write that review. And it would, and it would be like a 3 out of 5 star review.
I would be in disagreement with that review and the positive aspects, because I agree that that's a superficial note, and they treat the diversity in such a superficial manner. They treat the women as superficial embodiments, like Angelina Jolie, who's supposed to be incredibly captivating, one of the greatest film stars and charismatic personalities, and she's nothing in this movie. Like, she just comes off as bland, and
she's crazy. What are you talking about? She's got the what do they call it? The weebie jeebies. I forget what they call it. Doesn't matter.
But that would have been so much more interesting.
She's like one of those. She's treated like one of those dogs, like a beagle when it gets old, and it occasionally just goes crazy and bites people.
Yeah.
That's what she is. She goes animalistic,
and that dynamic
starts attacking her friends.
Yeah, that dynamic could have been interesting, but they utilize it once inside sort of a humorous deviation in a fight sequence, which none of the fight sequences are remotely good. They're filmed in such dismal fashion. Visually, I think there's nothing that you get involved in, and so I think really what it is the extension of the timeline of the experience of Eternals is 2 hours 40 minutes, which, I mean, it's about a half an hour longer than some of the longest Marvel movies. And then you get into the idea that none of the characters are interesting. The plot is so dense in this kind of mythology and lore that you become uninterested because because you start to feel its scale because of its intergalactic qualities, rather than it rooted on Earth within a dynamic of cultures, or even rooted on Earth with Thanos attacking Earth. This is beyond that. Earth is like a marble in this universe, and the people are not felt, and the people are not given a substantial element of the reasoning for survivability, or the reason to be granted survivability in this. And so it just becomes nothing.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. There's nothing anchoring this movie. Yeah. I mean, at least in Black Panther, there, the main characters of Black Panther are anchored in their responsibility to govern this weird, sort of unique place, right? And think about what that means and what they should do about it. So in that sense, their conflicts and lives are anchored in something, right?
Yeah.
The fate of Wakanda, right? Whereas, what are these people anchored in? Some of them nothing at all.
Yeah.
Some of them personal relationships with certain people.
And those...
Gemma Chan has a new boyfriend.
Yeah, but those don't go far enough.
And Brian Tyree Henry has a family.
Yeah, doesn't go far enough.
That's all that people are anchored
or you have Druig, and he's been controlling a native population.
Yeah, Druig has made himself
by mind
into
control.
like a cult leader.
Yeah, which has a lot of weird connotations, but in the Marvel way, we can't focus on this, and that he's been controlling a native population, mind control, and giving them weapons.
I like that character because...
No, I do too. I think
he's
interesting.
He's a reasonable take on how you'd respond.
Yes.
Right, which is, I'm going to use my power to make this little corner of my world nice.
Yeah.
And I'll pay the price to get that. Right? It's reasonable. I mean, he sees, the sort of climactic flashback sequences. They see, essentially Spaniards sacking Tenochtitlan.
Yeah.
And they have different responses to it. Well, that's an honest... His response strikes me as one of the more honest responses.
Yes, but we are not allowed to contemplate it. That's the thing. I think in a characterization, I think Barry Coon, like I said, I think he's really above this. Like him in Killing of a Sacred Deer, he's done Dunkirk. He is an extraordinary actor. I think he's one of the most promising people to come, one of the promising young actors to come out in the last couple years to really do something of a grand artistic thing in his life. I think he has a real good sense of control, but he brings a lot of that to this character, but I don't think we're allowed to contemplate any of the notions of what's going on.
It's funny, right? Because I think that Mickey Mouse or Bob Iger, whoever, they really are one of the characters in the Marvel universe that they occasionally drop in, which is the Collector. They just get amazing toys and they just keep them?
Or are they Amish? Are they the Celestials and they're creating little things for their own kind of world manipulation?
I mean, but if they are, they're lame.
I don't even know if that's the name of the Celestial.
I think that sounds right. But you get these amazingly talented people. It's like my thing with the sex. I mean, people, whatever, they make fun of me. That's fine. But like you have just gorgeous people. You have Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie, two of the most beautiful people of all time. I mean, just world historically gorgeous human beings. You have these amazing actors. You have, Gemma Chan, very gorgeous too.
Yes.
Good looking dudes. Kumail is jacked. He's looking great. Like,
hollow, empty though.
Embrace what is, like everyone is just so fucking boring. Like give them sexuality, give them something.
And they try,
like
and
at least
it fails.
at least with Druig, in part, yes, because of excellent acting, the character has a kind of depth to them.
Yeah.
The character has a kind of a little bit of an arc and something understandable, some feeling of what the fuck are we doing here? Mm-hmm. Right? And in that way stands in for us to at least try to say something about this fucked up situation. Yeah. Like, but it's too much, and it gets drowned out because of the bloat of this movie, and because of that it is required to serve this huge, and as you say, never-ending stream of content that just pours down into the fucking trough. Yeah. And, we go and lap it up.
Absolutely. Well, I should apologize. It's Arishem.
You should have. Sorry, Arishem. Come on the pod, Arishem.
Yeah, we our celestial.
Okay.
Overtaken.
You want to talk about Spencer?
I think that's Spencer. Good. Yeah, I think we've exhausted the conversation.
We've at least resurrected this horse once or twice and beat it back to death.
Yeah, beat it. Visually, I like that, and it's like, oh, we brought it back, and then we just beat it again.
It's also a metaphor for the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's true. So we can talk about Pablo Larrain's new sort of. I guess he's looking to do a trilogy on women who are at the kind of the currents of political power, and that they exert paranoia and personal distrust based off of the things that they cannot control, and it's usually political power. In Jackie, it was the United States government, it was the mythology of her husband, it was all of these things that she couldn't necessarily grieve, or she couldn't have her private moments based off of the nation needed to grieve. The nation needed something over her individual notion. There's a repetition here with Spencer. It's now focused on Princess Diana in 1991. Is generally, it's not stated, but that's what people think, that's around the time when she was fully dissatisfied with her marriage. Prince Charles, I don't know all the dynamics, but he was seeing another woman. I forget her name.
Camilla Parker Bowles.
There you go. And so
sorry, Thelen, if you're watching.
Yeah, well, I apologize. Well, because I'm not fully invested. I find the fascination with the royals odd. I do find it odd. So I have disconnected fully. So
you're unplugged from the Matrix.
I'm unplugged from that Matrix.
You're red pilled on the royals.
No. So I will say, and we saw it together. We did. Yesterday.
We did.
And we that's actually the first one we've seen together out of these movies.
Yes.
So
yes.
I was a bit perplexed with my experience. I was still trying to, and I was slightly negative only because I found Jackie, and it took me actually 2 watches to really immerse myself into Jackie. I found that to be refreshing. I found it to be bold. I found it to be an interesting take on a very particular moment and a very particular woman, and how she is dealing with that in a very personal way. And he has these interesting cinematic flourishes. He is I think a wonderful filmmaker, and how he immerses you into these worlds. And so initially I was a bit negative, only because I thought it was a bit repetitious. Not only on Jackie, but I thought the movie was a bit repetitious. I thought the performance was a large scale of moving on the spectrum of negativity, from anxiety to depression and all sorts. And so the performance seems overwrought a bit. The writing seems a bit overwrought. It seems a little much. And that, as I thought about it, because we just saw it yesterday, I was thinking about it at dinner, talked about a little bit about at dinner. I had a lot of time last night to kind of, I wasn't doing anything on a Saturday, and I just kind of sat and thought. And I'm a little more positive about it. I don't think it's as good as Jackie, but I do think that it is an interesting display of creating a world, especially the arcane tradition, the suffocating etiquette of a world that I think you can relate in a kind of overly nightmarish quality. That this is a nightmare for her.
Yeah, it's another horror movie.
Yeah,
We're becoming a horror movie show.
Yeah, it is a horror show, and not necessarily in the Clockwork Orange kind of way. It is a nightmare for Diana. And I actually think there's a lot of relatability to it. It is a very specific thing. The royals, I think, are an antiquated thing that England has held on to ceremoniously that is ridiculous to me. And I think the movie is showcasing that to a large degree. I think they show how ridiculous this all is, and that it is suffocating to those who are not necessarily built for it or wed into it, at their dismay and by force to a large degree, or they're unhappy or unfitting. And I could see that, it is a Christmas movie, and I was like, it's almost the perfect movie for a disgruntled holiday. If you go and visit family that you don't want to visit, you can feel it.
It's our Christmas with the Cranks.
Yeah, you can feel it in this movie. You're like, oh, I get that being dissonant, and then it's on a larger scale. There's a large sense of history to this. This is the bitterest Christmas in England since Lion in Winter. Like, this is it is so suffocating and bitter and nasty.
That's a great movie.
It's so good. It's so good.
Did that make your Christmas season?
Oh, it didn't. It should have.
Yeah.
Actually, there's time.
Yeah.
I still have 3 to record. I might switch it, Ben. Do you want to do that one?
I would definitely talk about Lion
You want to talk about Lion in Winter?
I love that movie.
We'll do that.
To just talk about 2 fucking master performances.
Oh, yeah. It's incredible.
Like 2... Yeah, that's
that's a good idea, Ben. We'll do that.
That's a great movie.
But anyway, I came about more positively to it. I think it's an interesting movie at the very least. I think in what it's trying to tackle on a character study, but also in the dimension of England, the royal family, this idea of duty versus individuality to a large sense. Alistair Gregory, Timothy Spall's character, is a complete fiction. Like, he never existed, but his embodiment. Yes. I mean, that's the thing. This whole movie starts out, it's a fable based on true events, and you're like, that's
based on true tragedy.
Tragedy. Yes, that's true.
I think actually the insertion of the word tragedy there is something I was thinking about a lot. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I that's a fancy way of saying this is all made up. Nothing is real, and I think you need to let that sit in, because it is sort of a fever dream of a heightened portrayal of the feelings that I think were real within this woman, within this sense. Everything, I think, is exaggerated. The decorum, the indifference of her husband, the moments of her despair. I think it's all purposely exaggerated, and I think if you tap into that wave, it is a thoroughly interesting experience. So, I mean, that's my way of saying I've come around to enjoying it. I don't know if I like it as much as Jackie, but what did you think?
I really like this movie. I guess I had some time to reflect on it, too. It is a movie that you can sit with for a while. Technically, I think Larrain is a very gifted filmmaker, yeah. And he uses a lot of really simple tricks to really great effect. I think this movie, if we just want to talk about technical filmmaking for a second,
yeah, sure.
I think it's really a masterclass in everything you can do with techniques as simple as shot, reverse shot.
Yes.
Every conversation uses shot, reverse shot in very interesting ways.
Yeah, the billiard room is
making
incredible.
People, he likes to put people right dead center in the frame in these conversations, and he shoots it inside the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And he'll make people bigger and smaller and do that for comedic effect. Very early in the movie, there's a great scene where Diana shows up at some rest stop or a gas station, and it's close on her, and then it puts the sort of woman behind the counter in context.
Yeah.
And kind of the bigness of her to them, the smallness of her, but then she's small. Like very simple stuff that anybody with a camera can do, right? Yeah. Very simple tricks. It's all tricks, right? Movies all tricks.
It is.
But like, it's very simple, and you don't get a conversation shot in the sort of other way you can do shot reverse shot where you do it over the shoulder till near the end of the movie where Diana is finally connecting with someone, we're not going to say who, and then they bring them both into the conversation, right? And we can see them both when they're talking.
Yes.
Which creates a kind of intimacy between these two characters that has been largely, this movie is about her being isolated, right? She is very isolated. And I thought that as someone who has dealt with a certain amount of anxiety in my life, I thought it was a very effective depiction of anxiety. Mm-hmm. This feeling of being in a situation that for other people would seem maybe fun, maybe prosaic, maybe quotidian, maybe just goofy. Like, I think you could imagine a different character going through this movie feeling like this was all kind of hilarious, right? It's all, people are different, people are constituted differently. It's that the physicality, Stewart brings a great physicality to this character, the sense of like being hot, the sense of feeling so physically uncomfortable in these situations, which is interesting because the movie very rarely depicts. One thing that I really love that the movie does is it shows you the build up to and aftermath of big events. You don't really see like all these dinners and gatherings that she's so apprehensive about. Very little of those are depicted. Yeah. There's one dinner scene that is rendered very interestingly.
Yeah, very dreamlike. Again, there's a lot of dreamlike essences.
Yes, and we do get. I mean, I said right after it that this movie to me owes a big debt to Black Swan. Although it's interestingly kind of from a story standpoint, it's the inverse of Black Swan. Black Swan is about ambition. This is a movie about finding yourself kind of in the midst of all other people's ambitions and wanting nothing to do with it. So they're kind of together. Those two movies form a kind of diptych of sort of paranoia, which can verge into kind of a blurring of what's in your mind and what's really happening.
Yeah. There is a physicality to her that she is discovering. I think a lot of people we're really hard on Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson because of the Twilight, sagas, pop cultural monument that they kind of sit in and have been defined. And she and him have been.
Yeah, they've both gone on to forge real careers as good serious actors.
Great serious actors.
Pattinson, I love him in what was the one with Charlie Hunnam, the
Lost City of Zed.
Lost City of Zed. I thought that was great.
Oh yeah,
the Lighthouse. I love him.
Rover, Lighthouse. I mean, he's incredible. He's an incredible actor.
She's done these movies with essayists that have been very well.
Clouds
received.
of Sils Maria, Personal Shopper. Yeah. She has this ethereal quality to her that I think captures. Like, she doesn't look like Princess Diana, but I think she's capturing a movement, an almost dance like avant-garde ballet embodiment of how it feels to be Diana to a large degree, like moving through this world as though you are, like, it's almost like Personal Shopper, moving as though you are a ghost in this world that you wish you could just leave. You're entrapped in this.
Well, there's all kinds of dualisms, right? Because you're the center of attention, but nobody really gives a fuck about you.
Yes.
Like, you are absolutely the white hot center of public attention. For the royal family in like our lifetimes, right? Nobody's been cared about or observed in that family as much as Princess Diana.
Yeah.
She's a. I mean, I go do bar trivia at a British pub.
That's true.
There's a picture of her on the wall. Right?
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like she is.
That's Fox and Hound, right?
Yeah, she is iconic. Right? She is iconic.
She is.
Her level of being iconic, I mean, is unquestioned, right, and massive.
Yeah.
And but yet nobody in her world seems to care much about her except for her children, right? Which is how they. I mean, I agree with you. I think that the movie has really two speeds, which makes it at times hard to swallow, because either she's really upset or she's with her kids and her one other friend in the movie. And those are where you get a level. You get a different level.
Little differentiation. Yeah.
But that's it. And it's mostly her being pretty upset.
Yeah.
I would say, well, probably at least 3/4 or more of the movie is her feeling bad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And but the movie functions on these kinds of juxtapositions, right? The juxtaposition between who she is really, what is expected of her, the fact that everybody in the movie just takes it for granted that this is all about keeping up appearances and kind of bullshit. Nobody makes the case that this is actually important.
Yeah.
And whenever you hear from other characters, which is fairly rarely, they basically just say, yeah, we know it's bullshit. Like, I think the Queen has one line in the movie.
One line, yeah. Which actually subverts, it's so interesting because it subverts this whole monolithic expectation of like what she is, and yet her line is almost a one of connection and understanding to Diana.
Yeah.
Something that she feels...
I guess maybe we'll start doing spoilers now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think
spoilers.
I think generally, I think we both like the movie.
Yes,
and I think we recommend it. I think it's an interesting watch to ignite.
I mean, and the dude is just a gifted filmmaker.
Yes,
at the end of the day,
yeah, he is.
I mean, he like I said, without any sort of like just with the very basic tools of cinema, he gets a lot.
He does.
Like. You know, with just a camera
talk
and
about a
good idea.
Beautiful movie.
Oh, God.
I mean, what's so interesting is this thing of juxtaposition is he does, instead of capturing, he does get the stuffiness of the etiquette and that it feels suffocated. They keep talking about it's just a bit of fun, you know, all these things, and there's no fun.
It's so fun. It's like Pip and Eros. It's like, here, we're gonna have fun now.
Yeah,
fun time. Boo, 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 boo. In case you're wondering, this is supposed to be fun.
There's nothing fun about this world,
God.
And that I bet you the royals did think it's quite a bit of fun. You know, this is about the extent that their imaginations can conjure and whatever crossbreeding that they have in this royalty world. But
I mean, she's a splash of color in the middle of this very dour world, like physically.
But it is also luxuriant. Like he does. It's interesting because I think he is trying to say that this is an overly luxuriant place, and so you feel the beauty, you feel the extravagance in the army delivers these things of food, and it just has full lobsters in them, and you're just like,
and it is great that they bring it in like shell boxes.
Yeah,
they repurpose the RAF or the British military or whatever repurposes boxes that held, I think, mortar shells.
Yeah, probably,
or some sort of munitions. And they become coolers for the massive bounty of food, organic produce.
Yeah, food, and you get these senses of how things operate, and there's something so strict and humorless, and yet with that, because it's so stricken, humor comes out of it. You know, Sean Harris, who I love, I think he's an underrated British actor. He shows up in the Mission Impossible series. He's in Red Riding. He's in that Harry Brown film. He is a wonderful actor. He plays the chef. And there's something so self-serious, and like you get what I like is there's a tenderness to the character, but how he's dictating militarily the cooking
brigade.
And the brigade. There's something so Monty Python-esque about how self-serious it is, like where you're like, oh my God, there is something so ridiculous about it. He even says there's almost like a Handmaid's Tale, like they can hear you, be quiet.
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first thing you see in the movie, one of the first things you see in the movie is a sign that says, "Be quiet. They can hear. They can hear you.
They can hear you." And
it's a little on the nose, but
well, and there's a lot of on the nose things. She wears a hat that says "OPP," other person's property. Like there's some dialogue that's tin-eared and on the nose. Like again, this is a balancing act of. There are things I dislike about the movie because I think Larrain operates better when he's subtler, and he uses the camera to tell you or inform you how to feel rather than utilizing the dialogue. Stephen Knight is not exact. He's a decent writer. I mean, he's done Locke, but he did do that. Matthew McConaughey, Serenity, the pseudo video game, a cult classic in the worst sort of way.
By which we mean a classic in cults. People in cults love this movie.
Yes, absolutely. And so Stephen Knight is interesting. He actually he is the person who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So that's a little known fact about. I guess
Stephen the answer
Knight.
Is him.
Yeah, him. He did, and he became it. I'm pretty sure a multi-millionaire. He's not the greatest screenwriter, but I think that they set up kind of a interesting mode here of delving in and out of her mindset, getting into the fragility and the vulnerability of her mind, even though it's not necessarily an oppressive. To most people, what it might be, it becomes more and more oppressive and daunting as she experiences it. Because once I think anybody can relate. Once you have no ability or patience, or you've been eroded to the sense that you can't suffer this again, or if you've had a family event, or if you've been to a thing, you're like, I'm so done with this thing. Once you experience it, the level of intensity of negativity that you feel is heightened. And I do feel like they do a good job in orienting you. And I think a lot of that work comes from Kristen Stewart's performance, not necessarily in the written qualities, because there's a lot of overdone qualities. The Anne Boleyn, like communicating with Anne Boleyn as a character, these weird Lynchian dream sequences of eating the pearls out of her soup. Like some of those work, but then they're a little on the nose to the experience. And I feel like the more tender and subtler the movie becomes, either in the dimensions of talking to her husband, Charles, or the little punctuations with her children, those juxtapositions I think work really well. Versus some of the on the nose elements become a little, silly.
Yeah, I mean, the movie does indulge, yes, as you say, in these Lynchian flourishes, right? Eating the pearls, which she does at dinner, and that's the one scene where we do actually like go in for the event, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to just kind of seeing what happens.
And honestly, I don't know if we are there. There's a question.
True.
There's a question because, like, when she again, it comes down to also she punctures herself with some clippers.
Yeah, wire cutters. Yeah.
And that's gone by the next scene. It's interesting. You feel as though she feels it, or she wanted to do that. And then the next scene, there is no actual wound. And so there is a question about, in her experience, what is paranoia, what is exaggeration. Yes. And I actually think that it works in its favor where you're not necessarily sure what is what, because she wants to be so removed from this, and she's so daunted by being there. She is having such a miserable time that she is trying to escape in all sorts of ways, and every time she tries to escape in her mind, it's like being plagued by work dreams, or being plagued by a world that you can't necessarily get away from. And you feel that it's intense and it's repetitive, but I think it would be. I think that experience over the weekend would be repetitive, wouldn't it? Like it's a constant regularity of meals. It's a constant regularity of events that you're expected to have a particular dress, and everyone's dictating everything for you. I mean, your sense of identity, and I guess that's a large point of the film, gets sort of removed, and it's about her, again, on the nose, I hope that horse was never tamed, But she wants to be an untamed horse. Like, she wants to be free. And you get these examples of her running, trying to escape. And a lot of this works. Some of it doesn't. There are there are immense qualities to this film that I think outweigh the negatives, and I think that's why I would recommend it. But it is a little overwrought at times, just a little.
Yeah. I mean, think about that scene, right? That conversation she has with whoever the character is who's supposed to sort of stand in for what the people in Britain call the company, right? Which is, you know, when Meghan Markle fled the royal family with Prince Harry, she would talk a lot about this, about the company, how individually the people were all fine with her, including the Queen, like everybody was nice. And in the one moment, as we already mentioned this, but when the Queen and Diana actually have a brief exchange, the Queen seems supportive of Diana. She says something that's kind of,
I didn't wear that dress. Like
sympathetic. I wore it something other than what I was told to wear, but I'm just currency.
Yeah.
What does she say? It's a good line, actually. What, you know, the picture that matters is the one they put on the 10-pound note, and then you realize that you're just currency.
Yeah.
It's so weird, right? Because one thing that Larrain is doing is smart is he's picking very particular people who embody their place in their moment in very specific ways.
Yeah.
The British royal family is a profoundly weird institution.
Yeah.
And it's one that really has no meaningful parallels, certainly in the United States. In the United Kingdom, right, they separate the head of state and the head of government. The head of government is prime minister, sits in the House of Commons. Head of state is Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth II is technically able to veto legislation. She opens Parliament. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She is the head of the Church of England to this day.
Yeah.
Her picture's on the money. She is this ceremonial figurehead. And when the British royal family has been justified to me by people from the United Kingdom, what they basically say, and I think they have a point, is that they want all the sort of personal stuff to be invested in someone who's not in the actual government. Uh-huh. So people can pour all their, you know, in America we have the president, we combine our head of state and our head of government, and this person has all this stuff invested in them. And I think especially in this age of cults of personality around whoever we put in that office, you can see the value of having all of that personal energy, that need for kind of patriotic, you know, fervor invested in someone who is not ideological, right? Who's just supposed to be kind of a figurehead. Other countries have weak presidents where they do the same thing. Germany, Israel. They have a president that's just kind of a figurehead person who is meant to perform the kind of state functions that we need someone to perform.
Sure, yeah.
And then the prime minister is part of the legislature, and they get their hands dirty in the actual business of governing and having an ideology and fighting an opposition and all the things that have to happen to govern in a democratic society. But in the United Kingdom, it that kind of idea perpetuates itself in this very weird appendix of an older era. Yeah. Right? I had a comparative government professor who said the reason that, you know, the United Kingdom isn't a modern country because, amongst other things, they don't have a constitution. They don't have a written constitution. It's true. And that's a requirement of embracing sort of modern liberalism, is you write the law down so people can know what it is, right? That's kind of a sine qua non, you know? People talk about the Code of Hammurabi, right? The eye for an eye and all of that. Yeah. As or being Magna kind Carta. Of brutal, right? But what they forget about the Code of Hammurabi is it was a major advance in civilization because it was the first time they wrote the law down. Yeah. Right? So you could go and look at it and see, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. It's not all on the conscience of the king. Right? And so you have this weird vestige, right? And in the conversation where she talks about the wild horse never getting tamed, the reason why the guy never finds out whether the horse was tamed is because they were in Northern Ireland and his buddy was shot. Yeah. Right? And so you have this real kind of, the real brutality of the British project in the 6 counties of the north of Ireland, which is now called Northern Ireland, right? Where people were killing each other. In fact, I think the Queen's cousin was killed by the Irish Republican Army, which is why it was such a big deal when they signed the Good Friday Agreement and they all got together. You have this juxtaposition between the most sort of done for public consumption, look at us, we have to keep up appearances, we have to play this important role, with the real shit of like what it means to actually exert power over people, which means people get shot in the head sometimes because of the thing you're trying to do as a society. And there's something I think very deep that Larrain is trying to get at there about the kind of about like the how bizarre it is to throw up into the world people like Diana, who are these just people who, or the British royal family more broadly, who have like all this weight put on them, but nobody can really say why. Or it's so weird to think about why they are what they are. Yeah. Right? Because if you have your hand on the button, right? You know, like the President of the United States does. They have their hand on the doomsday machine. Right? Well, of course, you're very powerful, and we have to think about who you are and under what circumstances you might press that button. But our need to sort of, you know, it's a fable, right? We make these people up, and they live rent-free in our heads. Think about how many people have thought, how many human hours have been devoted to thinking about Diana Spencer, right? You know, we watched a movie for 2 hours about her. Many others will. Yeah. Many lifetimes worth of human time have been spent thinking about Diana Spencer. That will not be true of Kyle Bruehl or Ben Thelen or most people. Not. It's like, what do we do with that? Yeah. Like this sort of cult of personality that develops around people like Jacqueline Onassis, like Diana. It's one of the most bizarre and interesting and fucked up and wild parts of living in an era of mass communication, is that we have these people, they're really avatars. We have these fables about avatars, which are also real people that live rent-free in our heads and that become these objects of obsession. Yes. It's very weird.
Well, and the movie is balancing that. The movie is almost borderline tabloid trash mixed with like an intimate character study, a sympathetic intimate character study, mixed with like a political thriller to a large degree that's encapsulated in her head. And it's that tabloid trashiness that I think still persists into a large, and how, I mean, we have a celebrity culture that's very prominent. The royals are that celebrity culture that still persists.
We have the Kardashians now.
Yeah, Kardashian. Yeah, which
that's our closest analog. People who are famous and you can't really say why or for what. Yeah.
I have still no idea. I've never watched an episode of the Kardashians. I know because of how talked about they are in
sort
culture.
Of weird desire to have parasocial relationships with our betters or something. I don't know. I mean, it's very
the
strange.
Idea of the betters. Yeah, it is sort of interesting because I think one of the more interesting creations because there's a lot of made up qualities to this movie. I mean, when they say fable, I mean they made a lot of things up. This whole obsession about the house next door. That house existed, but it was a hotel for the disabled at that point in her life. It was given to some guy in the military, and so it wasn't some hollow, empty memory palace that reflected Diana's paranoia to a large degree. There was no prowling into the subconscious, but again, it's in the mind rather than in physicality. So that's definitely forgivable. But Alistair Gregory, Timothy Spall, who I think is incredible in this movie. I think he's always a wonderful actor. He's lost a lot of weight. And I hope it's not illness. I just hope it's not illness.
Get well soon if you're not well.
No, yeah, I hope it is just he lost some weight. Like, you know,
working out.
however he
It's been
feels,
working out.
however he feels, he looks great.
He's like the most British dude.
He is. He's so British. But his embodiment, this made up dialogue he has with her about duty, and it's interesting how you pointed out that he has this dialogue about how he's telling this story, and then ultimately it's his friend who gets shot in the head, and it's about him defending the idea of duty and protecting the crown and the idea of it. And ultimately what he explains is pointlessness. Like, it's just because it's a figurehead, it's because it's this cultural embodiment. There is no really good explanation. And I feel like that is what's so frustrating about what is told about her, to her duty. Her husband says you have to do things your body won't let you. You have to do things for country over yourself. And none of it is convincing. All of it is assumed. Nobody is questioning it in the royal family. They all just are, they all seem depleted of energy or vitality. Everyone is so reserved that they are zombies. They are just walking in this world and having a bit of fun that they can't ultimately understand why they do things. They can't understand why things happen.
Well, if you want to explain to yourself why you can be a lazy person who lives in such luxury and does nothing for it, you have to tell yourself a story about how important you are and why this is an important role that you play.
Yeah.
And whether we think of that speech about duty as an honest reflection of something that some people feel, or a reductio ad absurdum of the whole premise, maybe it's both, right? Because and this is sort of a weird reflection on Eternals in a way, because the message there, the story that these people are telling themselves, is people need leaders. People need something to believe in. That when you find yourself in a desperate situation, you spent your whole life, you've devoted your life to Queen and country, right? And now your friend's been shot in the head, and you need to make some sense of that, right? Because to sort of, you could just stare into the maw of madness and just start screaming, and they take you away in a straitjacket, right? Because life is meaningless and you can't handle it. Or you can tell yourself a story, right? A story about whatever, right? Whatever keeps you going, whatever gets you through the night. Like John Lennon says, it's all right. It's all right. Whatever gets you through, right? And so what he is saying to her is, this is just what gets people through.
Yes.
Right? This idea, right? But as the world becomes less mystified in a way, right? Because we these people now feel the need to humanize themselves, right? Another good movie about the British royal family, The Queen, where Helen Mirren plays Elizabeth
Very good.
II, is all about this confronting the need. It's about her confronting her need to humanize herself in the face of Diana's death, right? She needs to give something away to get something, right? She needs to keep the people on her side who are on Diana's side. She needs to humanize herself to keep people with her, and to keep people believing in so far as they believe in the institution of the crown. But like in the modern world, right, this is this. So we're just going to keep on coming back to the same themes, because I just think about these things all the time. God is dead. The old is dying, but the new cannot be born, right? We have these institutions which kind of have some power to self-perpetuate and are just kind of dragged along by the inertia of the world, but whose justification no longer comports with what it once was. Like, nobody, I mean, the Japanese used to believe that the emperor was like a god on earth, right? I mean, it's not, nobody believes this stuff anymore. We're past that, right? Nobody believes in the divine right of kings anymore. No. And if the Queen actually ever did try to exercise what her power, like I said, she has the power to close Parliament, right? Like, that's actually part of her power to this day. Yeah. But if she ever tried to exercise it, there was actually some attempts to get her to exercise it during the Brexit thing, which is kind of funny. Like, they'd be gone tomorrow. Nobody wants them to do the thing that they purportedly are there to do.
Yeah.
Right? Her actual power, which in theory is quite vast, is not really her power because she couldn't exercise it. I mean, if she started vetoing pieces of legislation passed by the House of Commons, I don't think she'd be around for very much longer.
No, they wouldn't.
It's a sort of an understanding that we preserve the tradition that you have this power in some abstract sense because we believe in tradition, but you don't actually have the power. You don't do it, right?
Well, and I think relating that attitude, I think that attitude is very present in this film in the sense that all of that is kind of an arcane and empty and hollow sense of tradition that they're upholding in such decorum and regularity that it suffocates and expunges individuality to anybody who gets caught up in that wave, and that is Diana. Diana is desperately trying to hold on to I guess she proclaims middle class sensibility. She likes Les Mis and stuff like that. You know, it's very,
I like trash. She's like, I like trashy shit.
Yeah,
she likes Les Mis, Phantom of the Opera, and fast food.
Yeah, and fast food. Yeah, and which makes her more humbling and relatable. Most of the she communicates, even though she doesn't remember some of the maids' names. She communicates with them, I think, probably more often than any other of the royals probably do. There's a personal relationship it seems to have with the cook, who even though is trying his best to get her to abide by what is expected of her, like many, even Sally Hawkins' characters trying to do.
Yeah, they're all telling her to get with the program.
Get with the program. Be
different ways.
Beautiful. Different
ways, but they're all telling her, get with the program.
You get the feeling that and I think this is a wonderful element and layer of the film, that they're all kind of rooting for her. They all like her. They really want her.
Yeah, she's as much one of them as anyone is. Yes. Right? She's as much a normal person.
Yeah.
As any.
And that and you can say that
family.
Normalcy is what preserved her identity. You could also say the movie is trying to say that normalcy preserved her in general. Like, the whole movie is her driving herself. What killed her is being driven like by somebody else. And so it's like this idea of holding on to herself, holding on to this identity, which she eventually loses. And that's the tragedy. She eventually loses herself. She eventually succumbs to the idea of the royals. And so ultimately, maybe that's what killed her. Maybe that's what got her, taken from this life. And so there's a desperation in the film of really trying to claim that self. And so this idea of history and the emptiness of this power that, again, as you said, does not pertain to an actuality of people or of the royals or of government or of country. And yet she is caught up in that empty charade. And I
think that's part of the fable of it, right? Is that in some broader sense, we're all Diana, right? We're all sort of made at least slightly crazy by the sort of contradictions we're forced to accept. Right?
I think so.
Why should we care about these people? You can't say any. There's no good reason, right?
None. I've never heard a good one.
So you have this kind of, like I said, even the sort of high-minded Brits I know who defend it by saying basically the rubes need something to entertain them. Like, I understand. I see that it's silly.
Sure.
But, yeah, I mean, it is crazy making. It is crazy making to watch these people spend all this money and live in all this opulence and to keep putting her on the money and all this stuff and preserve the idea that we're something that we're not. I mean, the UK is a fucked up country and they're living in the past, right? I mean, they've got no, their only role in the world now is for the city of London to be where, Russian oligarchs launder their money, right? Which they hurt themselves to do by Brexit, right? By making themselves more isolated from the world community. So it's not a country that has exactly an auspicious present or future for that matter. But just this idea that we all have to accept these sort of mass hysterias. We have to accept these mass delusions. That people that Queen Elizabeth is important, right? like that, that somehow this institution is very important. It's very important that we sing "God Save the Queen," and as if that person is somehow special, right?
Yeah, we just did a episode for I Know Movies on the Bed Sitting Room. I think I even mentioned it last week for last night, so and it keeps coming up because a part of the criticism of that movie is all these Brits in the apocalypse trying to uphold tradition, and there's this woman of something Downing Street, like 7341, something stroke, and she's the queen. And like they're upholding that because she was the next in line of everyone who got annihilated in the apocalypse, and they sing God Save Ethel Stroke of Downing Street something or other, and there's something of a bitter irony to that, that even in the apocalypse the British would uphold such hollow, empty institution that this is. And it's
I mean, it's a bit like Walter Sobchak's rant about being Jewish and in Big Lebowski, like, you're goddamn right, I'm living in the past.
Yeah
For the Brits, it's the memory of World War II and the Blitz and how they all pulled together, and Elizabeth II, very important, sort of part of that, right? Kind of maintaining a stiff upper lip. The stiff upper lip. Well, so I don't know if I have too much more to say. I think I'm enamored with this movie to a large degree. I can see its faults, I can see its unevenness, but I think ultimately the positives outweigh the negatives that exist, because I think the positives, if you focus on them, the negatives kind of drift away into the airiness that this movie is in a cinematic in the cinematic language that it's offering, in the kind of fantasia, the nightmare fantasia that it is. So I am impressed with the work in the sense that it is a an interesting embodiment or immersion into this world that I think is contrary to what we're getting in, say, like The Crown. This melodrama of like trying deeply to connect you, even though there's a sort of performative quality to royals. I think The Crown is getting into because of that, the stakes of country and of what they represent. But this one is getting into more of an impactful emotional response to a particular individual to it, and I think it represents to a large degree. I think what you said, how we all feel in the context of things that we can't control or the things of expectation. And I think that there's a relatability to Diana and her portrayal here, and her what she's going through to us. And I think if you tap into that, there's a lot of something productive to get out of it. And I mean, and you did a good job sort of suggesting that at some level the core of it is just, we all know what it's like to be around like a bunch of family members we don't like and have to just do one thing after another.
Yeah, the obligation.
You feel obligated to do it. And you combine that with living in a fishbowl. You combine that with all this other stuff, and it just becomes this kind of And I mean, at the end of the day, right? What do we have? We have a great director doing good work. We have a great actor doing really good work. I mean, Kristen Stewart's. This movie is basically, I would say, a dialogue between the two of them. Really,
sure.
I mean, it's about the two of them kind of working together to tell this story. And they're both putting in work. I mean, they're both, very effective. I would say in telling a story that does go for it, right? I mean, really does attempt to get you personally involved in the real physical and emotional specificity of what this character is going through.
Yes.
I think on those terms it succeeds.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I thought it was a successful third week.
We have succeeded.
We've done it. We watched the movies. We talked about them.
Smash the like. Smash the subscribe. Sound off in the comments.
We haven't gotten a comment yet. We've gotten some likes.
Maybe I'll leave a comment.
You'll leave a comment.
I'll leave it. I'll troll us. I'll troll myself.
I want to just give a shout out. A movie I saw on Friday I thought was incredibly interesting that we're not talking about today because you haven't seen it, but I do recommend it to you, to everybody. It's called The Beta Test. It's Jim Cummings' next film. He did Thunder Road. He did Wolf of Snow Hollow. and it is a scathing indictment of like white male fragility in Hollywood, and I really found it the awkwardness of it is suffocating.
Oh, that's good.
It's really he's tapping into something there that I think is about men blaming everything else other than themselves or what's within them. And I found it fascinating. I don't think it's like the greatest movie this year, but I found it fascinating. And if you're looking for things that are complicated or worthy of your thought and getting into what things are trying to say, I mean, that's worth it. It's I just want to give a shout out to that movie. I thought it was interesting.
Well, then I'll also give it a shout out to the movie about Raymond Lewis. It's a documentary about a kind of great street baller who, for various reasons, was blackballed from the NBA. I just went and saw it last night down in San Pedro. It's part of the San Pedro Film Fest. Apparently, they're going to be putting all their movies online starting, I think, this coming week or next week.
That's fantastic.
So you can stream this for free. It's a great LA movie. It's all about LA. It's all about sort of basketball, and it's kind of one of these mythological tales of an athlete who sort of been forgotten by time, but still exists in the kind of mythos of Los Angeles hoops. So I commend it to you.
All right. Well, I think I want to try and do that. Throw some recommendations
yeah, that's
out.
good. No, I like it.
But thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Look at Dead Reckoner podcast.
Right.
You should look it up. I Know Movies and You Don't with Kyle Bruehl. We're still going.
We're doing stuff. We're doing Lion and Winter.
The horror season ends this week.
Ooh.
So that's my 200th episode on Wednesday.
Oh, that's right. We should get a
trophy.
Something. We should get send you a box of chocolates.
Yeah, 200th
box of meat,
published
like J.
episode.
Jonah Jameson. I'll get you a box of meat.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been a lot of work.
Kyle's gonna go take a nap now.
I'm gonna go take a nap, but we'll meet up next week. Next week we're doing Kenneth Branagh's Oscar bait, Belfast, and we're gonna do Lin-Manuel Miranda's movie, I think, on the creator of Rent. I forget his name right now, but Tick Tick Boom. I think we'll do those
on
next week. All right,
let's make it happen.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.